Hey guys, so we're in the workshop just harvesting the old taxi motor. So this is the engine that came out of Turbo Taxi. Last time I raced it, it started making noises and smoke. Did not hole anything, so hopefully the head is fine. I mean, this thing's got valve springs in it. It's got valve springs, it's got head studs, so you can see the head studs there as well. So the valve springs, I believe they're Plasma Man springs, ARP studs, so we'll stay with those. Hopefully the head's not damaged, because if the head's damaged, then I've got to pull all the springs out, transfer them over. But if everything's all good, we'll just take this entire head and put it on that motor over there, and then into the taxi. So when you're pulling these barrows apart, it's really important to keep your cams in order. All right, so intake and exhaust, or intake and exhaust. So it is vital that you keep all the equipment for the same side, all right? It has to go back on the way it came off. Talking barrows. So the sequence to removing the head is the exact opposite to the one you use when tightening it up. So you're working your way from the outside in. Okay, that's all done. So now, should just be a simple matter of lifting the head off. We got a winner, and it is number 5. Well, there you go. That is what went wrong. Number 6 ain't too healthy either. I'm pretty sure they did drain it, but we'll check it before we turn it upside down. Alright, so there's a little bit there. Well, just pulled the sump off, and thankfully there's no holes in this one, but there's a hell of a lot of shrapnel down here. Wow. Chunky. Only little bits, but yeah, it certainly has melted that piston pretty hard. Yeah, oh well. We'll clean it out, reuse it, because it's got the oil drain back. But yeah. Well, Turbo Taxi will live again. So we've pulled the head off and recovered pretty much all the parts that we need to get off this engine. But I figure we've seen the pistons, seen the damage done at the top, but why don't we slide them out of the bores, have a good look at them, and also see why we use green top motors for boost, because the rods are significantly better than the NA ones. So I'll whip this bottom end stuff off, and then we'll undo a couple rod bolts, slide them out. Well, you can see what's going on with the piston there. she's leaned out. So whether we've killed an injector or not, do not know, but certainly leaned out a bit, burnt away part of the piston, so we'll have to check those injectors, make sure they're all good or not. There she blows. Help me! Wow, that is sad face. Wow, she's melted that good and proper. Look at it, it just looks like it's screaming and crying, isn't it? Yeah. Broke it good and proper. And it's even like sprayed it onto the rod. That's just all molten aluminium on the rod where it's like torched it. Wow. That is craziness. The other ones seem fine. So, yeah, something's going on there. So we're just working out whether this block is savable. I mean, barrel blocks are a dime a dozen, but you know, that's only going to be for so long. But I'm just thinking, you know, do we bore this one out, do rods and pistons, but it's definitely had a good spray of aluminium on the cylinder wall. So, after seeing the state of the pistons, we thought we should check out the combustion chambers. And while they're not melted away or anything, quite a bit of the material from the piston has ended up in the combustion chamber, which is a little bit disturbing. Like there's splattering in number 6 and quite a bit in number 5. Like it's given the chamber a good old coating of piston aluminium, which means we pretty much can't use this head. And that sucks, because it has the valve springs I want. So it means I'm going to have to pull the valve springs off this head and then put them in the other head. Fuck my life. So we've pulled the taxi engine apart, we've shown you some of the damage inside of that. Well, I thought, why don't we pull the MX-5 engine apart a little bit while we're here. I want to pull a rod out of this, because this was a NA motor, and show you the NA rod next to an LPG rod to show you why we choose to use LPG engines for these sort of mid-boost, I won't say high boost, but mid-boost engines. So, but I also wanted to show you how much lacquer and varnish is in this engine. This is the engine out of the MX-5. As you can see, you know, it probably wasn't the best maintained engine when we got it. When you see all this brown coating, that's basically oil varnish from lack of engine oil changes, you know. So, yeah, engine maintenance, it hasn't seen too much, I don't think. But yeah, I'll quickly whip this apart. Because this engine's basically junk, I'm just going to throw all the bits in a box there. There we go. Into the box. Come on. There we go. Alright, now I can get at all the head bolts. Unfortunately, you cannot remove the head bolts with the cams in place. It's just, you may be able to get a socket to all of them, but the bolts are so long that they actually physically will not come out with, you know, I guess you could, in theory, pop the bolts up in place and lift them up with the bolts still in place. It's kind of a bodgy way to do it, but you can't actually physically lift the head bolt all the way out with the cams in place, so you've got to pull the cams, pretty much. The head bolts in these things are a little bit unusual in that they don't have a normal hex head. They have this crazy, I don't even know what they call this, E-series socket. So that's what it looks like. Now you can get away with using like a 9/16 socket. It will work, but you're better off using the right socket for the job. So breaker bar on there as well. There's a few marks there, but I wouldn't call there any significant damage. There's a bit of a mark there on the valve. The valve's not bent or anything. So yeah, that's kind of a win, I guess. So we'll get this thing up in the air, and because the rear part of the sump is already gone, it's going to be very easy to remove that piston and rod combination. So we'll lift it up, pull that piston, and we'll show you what a natural aspirated con rod looks like. Okay, let's have a look. Come on. There we go. Ooh, this one's a little bit bendy. You may notice it's got a slight bend in it. So here's the slightly bendy rod that we just took out of our MX-5 motor. As you can see, on first glance, you probably go, yeah, that doesn't look much different to what you pulled out of the taxi engine. But that is an LPG rod. And as you can see, side by side, there is a fair bit of difference. Now, we talked about this a little bit in the past, and because not everyone watches every video, we'll talk about it again here, and that is, why did the LPG engine get the big rods? And the reasons for that was, you know, the LPG, the direct straight E-gas LPG engine stems way back to the AU series, and they found that when AUs backfired, they bent rods. And AUs and BAs actually use the same rod. So you'd get something looking like that, you know, bend the rod, engine doesn't run right anymore. So they went to these big rods. Now, funny enough, in the BAs and that, and they run these big rods in the LPGs, the boys at Max Performance have pulled apart a lot of barrows, and they've never found a BA E-gas engine with skinny rods. They've all been heavy duty rods like that, even back to 2002, which is the first of the series. But the early turbo engines got skinny rods like this, and Ford found that they were actually bending rods and breaking rods as well. So the later series from BF onwards got heavy duty rods like that. So it's fair to say that LPG engines didn't get turbo rods, turbo engines got LPG rods. The difference is, of course, that turbo engines have a floating gudgeon pin. These are a pressed pin, all right? So, yeah, the turbo rods, they have a floating pin. You may also notice that the gudgeon pins on the LPG engine are slightly heavier duty than the one in the NA engine. Of course, there is always an exception, and that is the F6 engines, the FPVs, got heavy duty rods right from the get-go. And then you got the LPI gas engines, the direct injection LPG engines. A few people have said, why don't you use one of those? Well, they've got 12-to-1 compression and skinny rods. So too much comp and a skinny rod, that's not going to be healthy for boost in any way. Where LPG engines have got, well, the early ones were 10.7-to-1 comp, later ones at 10.3-to-1 comp. Turbo engines tend to be about 8.7-to-1 comp. So you can make more power with an LPG engine at the same boost than you can a turbo engine. It's funny enough. But you know, there is a point to everything, and I think we've reached it. So, revel in our destruction. Help me!